Good morning, everybody. So glad to see you guys. Hello, Miss Kathy. Hello, Richard. Good to have you guys here. And the rest of the Motley crew will show up whenever they show up. Um, and I just want to let you know, um, and I'll mention it again later, next week on Tuesday, October the 21st at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and all of this information is inside the Academy. A friend of mine, a relatively newish friend, David Maloney. He is British. I've mentioned this before, but I want to repeat it. He's a traditional therapist. So he's a doctor. He's got his degree in psychology. He does traditional therapy, but he has also become a student of A Course in Miracles. And he weaves what he is learning from A Course into his practice. And I mean, he's just a delightful soul. He's going to be our guest teacher inside of the Awareness Academy for the month of October on the 21st, which is a Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. So if you're interested in hearing, basically his presentation is going to be about how to be able to listen to guidance more clearly. So he's going to join us and share that. So, with all of his years of experience in traditional therapy, and then to weave A Course in Miracles into it, is really to help us understand more clearly how is it that we block our ability to listen to guidance from spirit. So that should be a really good conversation. So hopefully you guys can join us. And then, of course, oh, on the 28th, let me look at the calendar to confirm. Yes, on the 28th, a friend of mine, and actually she's been a client of mine for I want to say about 10 years now. I've been coaching her pretty much weekly. Hardly ever has missed an appointment. If something happens, we'll reschedule it. But other than a trip, hardly ever has missed an appointment. And she has been on a journey for, I want to say, 4 decades studying yoga. She studied with Sadhguru, a very well-known yogi, for many, many years. Helped him in many ways in the U.S., establishing an ashram in Tennessee, where she's from, and spent many months, I think weeks and months at a time in India studying with him. Anyhow, I share all of that because she has a very solid practice in yoga. When we started working, the focus of our work was to help her see her ego. She knew about the ego, and she knew about if she through yoga got herself steady enough and still and entered within, she could meet connect with God, with source spirit. So my work with her was to help her see the ego that blocked her from accessing what she had learned through yoga is possible. And I am just so excited to say that starting on the 20, I think I said it, the 28th, that's going to be at, let's see, what time will that be? It's going to be at 3 o'clock Eastern time. I try to make everything consistent. So Eastern time, 3 o'clock Eastern time, starting on the 28th, which is on a Tuesday for 4 consecutive Tuesdays. She is going to do a presentation, and the whole crux of the presentation is exploring the self, capital S self, through meditation. And she is going to walk us through her practice. And she is one of those clients. I've had many clients, thousands of clients over almost 20 years of coaching and teaching. And one of these days, my runny nose is going to be done. I look forward to that appointment when we will get to that place. But anyways, one of the things that has always been so cool of having Jenny as a client is she was so committed to liberation. Anything that I suggested that she do, any exercise, anything that we looked at, anything she had to confront, she was always willing to do it. So that level of commitment to whatever it takes, I want to free myself from the ego. It was just such a joy because, of course, I took her through many, many, not only our coaching classes, but she participated in my year-long programs, went to my workshops in Georgia. And anyhow, her commitment to seeing the ego and just transcending it. She is one of those examples of clients that I can say, wow, this work works if you work it, as they say. So I'm so excited to have Jenny be a teacher inside of my academy when for so long she was just an amazing student. All right, so today we are going to continue in lesson 186. Salvation of the world depends on me. And that particular lesson, and again, I'm so sorry that I have to keep blowing my nose. Everything has been narrowed down to a sinus infection from a root canal that I am going to finally have that tooth extracted here in the next couple of weeks. I'll be scheduling that appointment. And as things go, my dentist does that kind of work usually on Mondays, which is why I have to cancel classes on Mondays. And she's closed on Tuesdays. She also does that work on Wednesdays, but I do a lot of coaching on Wednesdays and have so many other things going on Wednesdays that it's a challenge to change up, so many individual people's appointments. It's not as easy to schedule those as it is to just skip a class in the academy. But anyways, I will get that extraction done soon, remove that tooth that has been abscessed and get my sinuses back. So lesson 186. Salvation of the world depends on me. And if you are getting my newsletters, which come out weekly, pretty much they are scheduled to be posted on Tuesdays. If you're not getting my newsletters, just go to the Awareness Academy, and every one of these posts I put links to be able to join the newsletter. I mean, it's free. It's anybody who joins the academy, you're given that as an option to be able to get the newsletter. But I do just a weekly newsletter and do an article. So I've been doing a lot of my newsletters based on this particular lesson. The salvation of the world depends on me because it is such a misunderstood lesson. And it is so crucial that we fully understand what this lesson is all about. The ego wants to say, I've got the burden of the world's salvation depending on me, which is a distraction from being able to see really what this lesson means. The ego goes off in one of two ways. It becomes a victim to the situation. Oh no, the whole world's going to depend on me. I can't save the world. I can't save my own ass. How can I save the world? And it operates inside of this fear that it just can't do it. Which of course it's perfect for the ego because then it doesn't do it. It doesn't do what this lesson is saying. The other side of the ego is that it turns into a bully. Well, if the salvation of the world depends on me, I'm going to have to create an organization. We're going to have to go to war with all the people that are not doing the things that allows me to be the savior of the world. I'm going to be the next Messiah, and it gets inflated and it turns into a bully with this mission to go and save the world. Both of those ways of operating, which is how the ego shows up. Ego has two sides of the same coin, two faces, the victim and the bully. And both of those are what forms the egoic mindset of separation from a low frequency. I am either a victim or I am the bully that creates victims. Now, to be a bully, you were once a victim. No bully is ever a bully without having first felt like a victim. And of course, there are many degrees of expressing itself as a bully, as there is many degrees of expressing itself as a victim. You can feel victimized because somebody took your parking spot at the grocery store, but it's not a big deal. Or you can feel victimized when you go to the grocery store and they're out of the product that you want. Oh my gosh, I can't get this, I can't make this meal that I promised for the family for supper, or they're out of the flowers that I wanted to buy for my beloved for Valentine's. You can feel victimized by something really insignificant in the big scheme of things, and you still feel victimized. Oh, how could this have happened to me? All the way to a victim where you have been held against your will, physically held down. Your mind has been affected, your emotions have been altered, your body has been abused, and in from a simple spanking of a child all the way to physical, absolute, atrocious, horrendous physical abuse. So from the grocery store not getting the item that you wanted, all the way to the most egregious of abuses, you can be victimized. And all of those are different levels of consciousness, because one who is physically and emotionally, especially in childhood, and experiences a total complete shock to their system, where psychologically they become, they don't even know who they are, because the mind gets psychologically affected, distorted into different personalities. I mean, you can appear to be functioning in the world, but psychologically you can be totally disconnected from anything that ever happened to you, because of all the ways that the egoic mind can cope. So when you understand all of those degrees of victimization, then you can better understand all of the degrees of being a bully. A bully is basically somebody who has to pass on to another. This is how, what the ego call, or I'm sorry, Course in Miracles calls projection, projects onto somebody else that which has affected me. When you were a kid and you play the game hot potato, you know what I'm talking about. You get the hot potato in your hand and you got to throw it to somebody else. Here, you have it. That is the way that the ego operates. I have been wounded, and this pain of my wounding is so big, I now must displace this on somebody else. Meaning, I'm going to wound you. You're going to hurt, so that through your pain, I feel vindicated. When we are abused, and especially as a child, because so much of it gets psychologically imprinted into our mind. When you are a child and you get abused by somebody that you trust, a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, um, and you feel like you have no voice, you cannot speak up. This is the person that you're not only you trust to keep you safe, but you trust to keep you fed and to keep you warm and to keep you clothed, to give you the things that as a child you know you should have. So the soul of a child says, I love this person, I trust this person. And then you experience the abuse from this person that you trust. It just messes with your psyche, because it's hard to understand, because it's incomprehensible that somebody who says they love you is also hurting you. When we have that psychological break as a child and we are abused, what happens is, as you get older, whether you have older sibling or younger siblings, or you become a parent, or you become an uncle or an aunt, and you now are in a position of some authority, you will then throw that hot potato to the other person. I'm going to abuse you. The abuse doesn't always have to look exactly the same. But typically, a child who has been sexually abused will grow up to be an adult sexual predator. That's just psychology. Not always, but oftentimes, unless they do the intervention work, that where they decide, okay, I'm not going to continue to do this, that, or I want to work through this pain, and they get the best of therapy, and maybe they're on a spiritual journey, which I know some people who have been sexually abused, children who have been sexually trafficked, and then they go through this incredible awakening. They're not here to become bullies, they're here to become healed. And from that place, then they go on to heal others, to assist in the healing of others. Sorry, I'm going to have to blow my nose one more time. I so apologize for this. So, as we understand what the Course in Miracles is attempting to do, it is training our mind to work through the emotional pain that we experienced that form the personalities that show up as a victim or a bully. So when we get to a lesson like 186, the salvation of the world depends on me, is to prepare us for the amazing trust and belief that God has in each and every one of us. As the children of God, as the creation of God, created to extend the kingdom, the salvation of the world depends on me means that God really trusted us to do something amazing, but it starts with me. This is why, this statement is attributed to Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. So when we experience all of this emotional trauma as a child and our ego gets formed, it prevents us, it blocks us, it creates barriers from hearing our soul. The soul of the child was there, has always been there, but you can barely hear it when you're listening to the noise of the ego about not only the pain that you've experienced, but as you're plotting the pain that you're going to inflict on somebody else. Whether that's a conscious thing or not, it does not matter. If that is happening inside of your psyche, whether you're conscious of it or not, is irrelevant. It is happening. That takes up a lot of our mental space. It's what makes the mind a monkey mind. And this is why we have to learn practices like my friend Jenny is going to do, and to teach us how to listen to that higher self, the soul self within. For many of us, it has taken lifetimes to be able to do the work, one lifetime after another one. We do a little bit more, we raise our frequency, we incarnate again. We do a little more work, we raise our frequency, we incarnate again. That is why, and again, for me, 20 plus years of observing the students and clients of mine, I can see where certain people get to a certain place and they kind of stay there. And I watch them, and I hear about their lives. I follow them maybe on social media, and I can see what they're doing, and they just don't move past that spot. Now, of course, in the beginning, my ego was involved and I wanted to judge them and tell them, hey, come back, there's more work to do. And through the years, I've learned everybody is the creator of their reality. If somebody doesn't want to move, if somebody's not asking me, Lina, can you do an assessment of where I'm at? I don't do an assessment of where they're at. I only do that with students and clients of mine who want to know where they're at because they are being very deliberate about transcending their ego. But most people, and you know that you are stuck in a certain place on this journey when you have to be right about anything. If we have to be right about our position, it doesn't matter if it's politics, it doesn't matter if it's spirituality. Listen, some of the most entertaining groups that I dive into for a short period of time, because sometimes it's too funny that it's painful, where you get into this righteousness, is in Course in Miracles chat groups where they have to be right. This is what this line says, and everybody is wrong because of this, and it's just fascinating. But if we don't humble ourselves, as we have seen so many teachings in the Course tell us that, in the very first paragraph in this lesson, paragraph number 1, let's read that one just to get our mind back in alignment with lesson 186. Salvation of the world depends on me. Here is a statement that will one day take all arrogance away from every mind. Here is the thought of true humility, which holds no function as your own, but that which has been given you. In other words, If we accept the salvation of the world depends on me as God intended it, not only do we let go of all arrogance, thinking, I know better than God. I know exactly what this means, and I'm not doing that. The arrogance of the ego is thinking that we're right about everything, that we know what this already means. And here is the thought of true humility, which says, God, show me the way. I do not know what anything is for. I really want you to guide me to be able to move into the place, which again, it's perfect that I've got these two teachers coming to help the academy members. One with Dr. David, we need to learn how to sort through the egoic shenanigans to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit, to hear the voice for guidance. And then Jenny's going to help us in a different way sift through the noise to get to the place of stillness where we can listen to that higher self. Lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing. Whatever works for you is perfect, but we all, if we're going to wake up, we must get to the place that we humble ourselves before God, cannot know what anything is for, come with a mind that is totally, completely curious and open. And then at the same time, to be able to do that, you have to have let go of the arrogance of the ego that thinks we are right. We know everything. I know what everything is for. This is so obvious, like, for example, right now in politics, as I'm observing people just absolutely losing their minds by watching the peace that is being orchestrated in the Middle East. People who were upset that we didn't have peace in the Middle East and people are getting killed are now upset that we have peace in the Middle East because it was brought by a character that they may not like. The insanity, that is where we see the arrogance of the ego. First, a few months back, I want peace. I want them to stop killing people. And then is, well, I don't like this peace because it was brought about by this person. I mean, the insanity is, if you are open-minded and you can sit back and observe, you can see that the ego is insane. The Course in Miracles says the ego is pure insanity. I didn't understand that early on in my journey until I began to really coach and teach and observe it in others in a way that I couldn't quite see it in myself. But as I was observing it in others, I was like, oh my gosh, I do that too. I do that. And that's how I was able to begin to move from listening to my ego attempting to make me righteous and making decisions, even spiritually speaking, that were insane, so that I could align with the truth of who I am as God created me and become one who can participate in the grand game, the grand plan, the grand orchestration of bringing about heaven to earth. Then in this lesson, we continue to look at not only the importance of genuine humility and letting go of arrogance, but also what is it to be humble? To be humble, as the Course is teaching us, is to be willing to hear what God has to say for us. And it tells us in paragraph number 2 that this idea is that we're studying here is one that in sentence number 2, paragraph 3, it says, all it says is that your Father still remembers you and offers you the perfect trust he holds in you who are his son. So here we are being told that God trusts us to give us such an important project, an important purpose, an important job, and that is to be the saviors of the world. So then it goes on to tells us what humility is all about. And in the same paragraph number 3, it tells us, what could humility request but this, that we accept that God trusts us? And what could arrogance deny but this? Oh, I can't save the world, meaning I don't believe that God has a plan for me like that. So today, we will not shrink from our assignment on the specious grounds that modesty is outrage. I'm too modest to be the savior of the world. So we are not going to shrink from what was given to us. When I am working with a student, a coaching client, this is when I really can see which fork in the road are they taking. To accept that you are as God created you, to really fully acknowledge your power, your magnificence, you must come to this fork in the road when you say, I cannot be able to do the function that God has for me. I'm not that good, or I'm better than that. I can't do, somehow I'm going to avoid that function. The students who humble themselves enough to say, you know what? I have never considered that who I am is absolutely perfect as God created me, that who I am is capable of doing exactly what God says I can do. I haven't stopped to really accept that there is a purpose for my life that is beyond going to work and paying the bills and mowing the lawn and feeding the kids and going on vacation and retiring. I I never knew that what I do can literally save humanity, can contribute to the change of the trajectory that humanity is on. Very, very few people will move to the place of that level of humbleness and acceptance of the function that we've been given. That was a pivotal moment for me in my journey, was when I sat and went, what if? What if I am the absolutely one and best person for this job? What if everything that Jesus is telling me, God believes about me, is true? Can I let myself experience that? Can I let myself sit with the possibility that I am that important in God's plan? Well, my ego had a field day. Ooh, I'm very important in God's plan. My ego got all spiritualized and all high and mighty. Yes, and I went through a period of time, and you see it. You can see it out there in people who profess to be spiritual teachers or religious teachers, and they go on to say things like, this is the right way, this is God's plan. God's plan is that we only save the Christians and, let's behead everybody else. Or we only save the Muslims and we behead everybody else. Many people will rise to the level of spiritual belief that says, I am right about God wanting me to save this group and get rid of the other group. That's how you know how there's so much spiritual arrogance. There are so many groups that, yes, they've learned a lot and maybe they've studied a lot of the history of religion and they have a great knowledge about that. But the Course in Miracles is helping us let go of all of that human knowledge and come to the place where we remember only what is true according to how God created us, not according to the programming that we had received, but how God created us from the very get-go. And that requires that we accept that if we were created by God, God wanted us here. God really loves us. The creative source of all that is, what God is nothing more than an intelligence that is, and here's how logically we need to understand this. What God is pure consciousness. You can't even call it energy. It is pure consciousness, but we'll call it energy because that makes it easier to understand for many people. This consciousness is intelligent. It knows it is one with everything. It knows that its thoughts create whatever it's thinking. And because it is one with everything, it is a form of love that you don't have to learn that love. It just is. It's part of you. And because you're expanding the kingdom. And let's say, to make it simple for us to understand, it's creating universes, it's creating multiverses, it's creating the space between the planets, it's creating the beings that inhabit all these different planets. All of that is being created by the creative source, but it is one with all of it because it's all coming from its own imagination. It's like a painter who paints all these different things. all of these different maybe over time their taste changes and they start with these colors and then move to these colors, maybe practice this style and then shift to this style, but they love everything that they created because it's what they were doing at the time. God loves everything that it created, but it doesn't need to call it love because it just is. When we understand that just God is, consciousness is, intelligence is, love is, everything is made from that, created from that, with a very specific purpose. It fits into the plan. It's like the artist that paints every character, and you step back and you look at the painting, and maybe you look at 100 of their paintings. They're all different. They all have different characters, but every painting, everything that's in it makes sense. All of it makes sense. When we accept that role, that function, without the arrogance, oh yes, God created me, but God created me and told me that I got to get rid of these people. You know that there is arrogance in there and ignorance, obviously, because God is not going to create any of its creations to discard anything that God created because God loves everything that it has created. It created because it wanted it there. So how do we go from being these perfect children of God to becoming these terrorists in the name of God? Well, it's because that's where the ego comes in. All of these beliefs that we begin to believe that begin to take hold, and we begin to side with that voice, we can hear the guidance. We can hear the higher self within us. We can't hear the voice for love because we're so busy listening to the voice for fear. That is the gift of free will. We can listen to whatever voice we want to listen, and God will not punish any one of us. As a matter of fact, when we have the death experience and we dropped our egoic identities, all that is left is our connection to the source because that is what where we come from. That is what created us, and nothing can discreate us. Now we can miscreate, but nothing can get rid of us because God created us as eternal beings. So when you look at these teachings and what we're doing is to gain an awareness of the truth of who we are and humbly begin the process of saying, okay, God, what would you have me do? Then we have to go through these process, and it takes us into paragraph 5, where it tells us, that there's really one way to move forward with God, and only one, and is to be released from the imprisonment, our plan to prove his plan, um, that the false is true, that his plan is false and the ego's plan is true, has been brought to us through A Course in Miracles. We need to accept the plan that we did not make. To accept the plan that we did not make is to move into the space of recognizing, well, what have I been wrong my whole life? Because when we can enter the place of humbly saying, maybe I don't know anything. Maybe I've been mistaken my whole life. That is a willingness to begin to question everything that you believe. Why do you drink coffee? Why do you vote this way? Why do you like that football team? Why do you why do you shop? Why do you like this versus that? Why do you hoard? Why do you need to invest and accumulate? Why do you do? If you're willing to question everything, you're going to see that everything that you believe that makes you think it's who you are, if at its basis has fear in it, that is from the ego. That is what we're undoing. We're making a decision. I'm not going to believe anything else that my ego tells me. Nope, I'm not going to believe that. I mean, when I decided for me, I am not going to pay for health insurance anymore because I had learned so much about the insurance industry and the the medical world, the lying and the cheating and the things that are being done for profit without caring about the outcome, the well-being of other people. When I saw and heard stories of hospital turning people away because they didn't have insurance, I thought, wait a second, that's not what brothers and sisters in Christ do for one another. So I decided I'm not going to fund an industry that I believe does not have God at its core. They might say it. They might have a chapel in the hospital, But if the walk and the talk are not in alignment with the thought system of love, then it's not being honest in terms of its consistency to be something that is Christ centered. So I measure everything based on is what I am supporting more Christ centered or not, more egoically centered or not. That is my gauge. Borrow it if it makes sense for you, leave it if it doesn't. Because most of the world is not Christ centered. Most of the world is selfish and greedy because the ego operates with power and money as its primary thing that it chases. That's how it gets defined. To move down the path of Christ consciousness is to operate from all the characteristics of a teacher of God: generosity, consistency, which is honesty, trusting. So when we begin to decide, okay, I'm going to take the God's path, God's plan, and God is telling us to learn to trust, to learn to silence the ego, to go into stillness, to listen to that voice. Well, you have to be prepared to let go of your thoughts. You have to be prepared to, if you have egoic thoughts, to override them and say, no, for a moment, I'm not going to believe that thought. I am going to listen to the voice for God. So, in paragraph number 6, which is what we looked at last week, we saw how arrogance makes an image of yourself that is not real. That is the ego, that is the egoic personality. It is this image which quails and retreats in terror as the voice for God assures you that you have the strength, the wisdom, and the holiness to go beyond all images. This is where, again, we come to that fork in the road. I am going to trust God. I am going to trust that everything is going to be okay. I'm going to recommend that you try this. Try this little practice. And if something gets upset in your world, let's say you get a notice that something's going to be cut off that you've been counting on. Somebody's not going to manufacture that same thing and you've been counting on it. You're not going to get your shipment, your monthly shipment, or whatever it might be. Anything that is upsetting, that upsets your apple cart, sit with that thing and go, huh, maybe this is what Lina was talking about. I am upset that I'm not getting this thing. And question, why do you need it? Well, because it's what makes me feel good. It's what gives me, it's my regular coffee. Now they're not going to make it. I need that coffee so I can get going in the morning. Be very detailed with why you are upset that you're not going to get this thing that you think you need. Let's say your doctor's retiring, you can't see them anymore, or your insurance says you can't go to this person anymore. Sit with your upset. Why is this upsetting me? And you're going to find at the bottom of all that fear. That's ego. That ego has you get upset because you're not getting something that it has trained you into believing you need that to be okay. So now you see the ego. The ego has been exposed. Its trickery was just exposed in that one situation. Now let's do this. Arrogance makes an image of yourself that is not real. I need this thing to be okay. I need this thing to be healthy, to be wealthy, to be safe. It is this image which quails and retreats in terror. I am so upset that I'm not going to have my coffee or my doctor or my whatever. As the voice for God assures you that you have the strength, the wisdom, and the holiness to go beyond all images. And you sit and go, okay, God, what would you have me do? If this is going away, I'm going to trust that you have something better for me. There is a lesson in this for me. There is something is going to turn out better for me. And you assure yourself that God has your back. You will see very clearly the upset of the ego over not having its way. That's showing you anything in you that throws a tantrum is not who you really are. It is the ego. When you can begin to look at that and go, wow, that part of me is really upset. That part of me is not trusting God because it's trusting something external. It's created an image, it's created an idol. So, what is it that I need to do? This is why you need to train your mind to go into stillness. God, what would you have me do is not a flippant statement that we make, although many of us make it. I know I've have when we're getting spiritualized. Oh, yeah, well, I already told God, what would you have me do? But then I need to start researching to start finding the next, doctor that is going to change this, or the next coffee product that is going to replace this thing that I know I need to have. To move into conversation with guidance. It may happen immediately, it may happen in 2 weeks. It's going to happen at the right and perfect time. We're cultivating trust to say, if this doesn't get resolved now, I am trusting that the right and perfect thing is coming my way. This is how we train our mind from the reactions of the ego to try and fix things so that I don't suffer, which creates suffering, to training our mind to listen to God. And in the peace of trusting God, we sit and we wait however long it needs to take. Sometimes there are answers that I didn't get for a couple of years, but they were the right and perfect answer. And when I made the commitment that I was going to trust 100%, anytime I would get a little upset, a little worried, a little concerned, I knew I wasn't listening to God. Ego was trying to pull me back to go down this fork in the road. There's a famous book that was written. I actually have never read it, but I love the title, The Road Less Traveled. That is the path of traveling this human journey with God as your guide, going in front of you. The voice for God, the Holy Spirit, whether it's the Christ, Saint Germain, whatever it is that you call it, when you commit to listening to that voice, it is going to move you by necessity through very uncomfortable experiences that show you where you have attachments to the ego. Every time that we have an irritation, it is bringing up into the surface. For one whose mind is ready to see, eyes are prepared to see, ears are ready to hear the ego shenanigans, the fears, the lies, and you can say, okay, God is all about love. So this cannot be this anger, this resentment, this worry. It's not of God. Who is it of? It's of the ego. We have to sort out those voices because what it tells us in paragraph number 7, all this, basically all of the, actually, let me read all of paragraph 6 because it ties into 7. So we already read sentence 1 and 2. Sentence 3 says, you are not weak, as in the image of yourself, as is the image of yourself. Your ego is weak. Your ego's scared that you won't have the right coffee, that you won't have the right medical care. Your ego is scared because it's associated with the body. You are not ignorant and helpless. Sin cannot tarnish the truth in you, and misery can come not near the holy home of God. Inside each and every one of us is an altar, a very beautiful, strong, powerful place that most of us don't go visit. Most of us don't go to the altar where the Christ light is within. The work that we're doing is quieting the mind, stopping all of this activity out here, coming in further and further and further until we reach that altar within, where we will know exactly what to do. Where if we trust, some things may be inconvenient for a short period of time, but you know you're doing it because it is in service to your own liberation. So then it goes on to say in 7, all this, the voice for God relates to you. And as he speaks, the image trembles and seeks to attack the threat it does not know, sensing its basis crumble. The ego is going to go into, it is going to go insane, more insane. It's going to get upset. When you decide, when you make the decision, you know what? I am going to trust that God is going to show me what's next for me. Your ego is going to have a field day. What do you mean? Why are we trusting a voice inside of you? You should be trusting me. We already have this. We've already been doing this. We've been doing this for 18 years. We've been doing this for 3 months. This is what we said we were going to do. You have a crazy conversation inside of yourself. And this happens many times during a journey when we are ascending. is you think you will experience yourself as spiritually bipolar. You will have this trust and this peace, and then all of a sudden, ego starts talking to you, and you start getting all concerned and worried and upset and anxious and what if I let go of this thing? I know I experienced it when I decided I wasn't going to pay for insurance. I didn't just wake up one day and say, "No, I'm not going to pay for insurance today because I know I don't have to worry about that ever again. I'm trusting God." I had months of saying, okay, I'm not going to do that. And boy, that 31st day of the month came around and I got the message, oh, you better pay your insurance or you're going to, your policy going to lapse. I would get all nervous and I would send a check. I would immediately, make the payment. And then afterwards I would go, Lina, why did you do that? You said you were going to trust that you don't need this insurance, that you would be guided to the right and perfect people who would help you through your journey if you ever needed any kind of medical assistance that was going to be more holistic, not insurance based, not the old way. The next month would come around. I'm not going to do it this month. This is the month that I'm not going to do it. And my goodness, got to the end of the month. And this is how I found out that there is no such thing as the end of the month and they kick you out. Because then I found out that they send you a message right after that. You missed your payment, but we will make an extension for you because, you never miss payments. And then I decided, no, I'm not going to do that one. And then you get another notice 15 days later. Well, you missed your payment, but you always make your payment, so we're going to make an exception. And then I get another notice at 30 days. Well, you missed your, but it's okay. We're not going to kick you out. It looks like your policy has expired, but it really hasn't. We want your money. And then I realized, okay, I suffered for months unnecessarily, but necessarily. I needed to see all the shenanigans that my ego did, which is just right here. It was attacking me and threatening me. Things are going to get worse, all in my own head. I was in terror in my own head. But when I would sit and do my meditations and talk to God, I was always told, you will have what you need when you need it. And what I realized was I was scared shitless to trust God when I was thinking that the system that I had bought into was the one that I could really count on. And it took me a while. That's why I never judge. There's no reason well, first of all, I wouldn't judge anybody because it feels uncomfortable to judge. I have to shut my heart and think that I'm better than somebody else and move myself into arrogance, which just shows that I'm ignorant. I don't like that feeling. I prefer not knowing anything. That's more enjoyable, more peaceful within me. So I don't judge anybody who has a hard time moving through this process. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to be courageous. That's why courage is such a high frequency. And most people are not courageous because most people are unwilling to tell their ego that their ego is wrong. Most people cannot say, "Oh, I am wrong about this," because we work so hard to be right. So when you come to the place that you begin to see the ego getting really upset with you because its power, it's crumbling, then the next sentence says, sentence three, let it go. Let it go. Salvation of the world depends on you and not upon this little pile of dust. What can it tell the Holy Son of God? Why need he be concerned with it at all? I was concerned with the ego because I was afraid, well, what if I get sick and I'm going to have a big medical bill? What if I get sick and I can't see the doctor and I can't and I don't have insurance and I can treat it. It's going to cost me so much money. I'm going to lose everything I have. Well, that was just an opportunity for me to see all the idols that I had created. The outside world was now responsible for keeping me safe. And when I let myself have all that stuff come to the surface, I realized how interconnected all of these things are. The insurance and my financial well-being, my mortgage, my happiness, all of those things were so woven together in such a way that you don't really see that it is just one big wild web of deceit, of lies that has us look outside of us for our safety, for our protection, for our happiness, for our peace. It's never going to be out there. It's only going to be in here. But for you to find it in here and experience it out here, you have to do what the characteristics of a teacher of God teaches. You've got to become consistent. And that requires honesty. That requires you saying, oh my God, I let go of this thing or I'm facing this thing and it scares me. Be honest. It scares me. Why does it scare you? Because you trust the ego and not God. When you can have that level of honesty, you can begin to see, okay, trust of God is this path less traveled clearly. Trust of ego is this path which we all follow. Do you want to have liberation? Do you want freedom? Do you want to experience sovereignty? Do you want to know yourself as God knows you? Then you've got to begin to let it go. Begin to step away from what the world says you have to do for you to be okay. It does not mean that you have to give up your insurance at all and go into terror. It does not mean that. A lot of people that would be cruel to have to let go of something like that. But it does mean that you have to become honest. Why can't you let it go? And to then when you cannot let it go because you're afraid, maybe it's your age, maybe it's you have a condition that you've had, maybe you think it's something that runs in the family. Begin to be honest about what is that thing that scares you. And then that thing that scares you, you bring that into to God. God, I've got these fears around this thing, diabetes runs in the family and I'm afraid to let go of my insurance because I need that. You go to God, you're going to hear guidance. If you're sincere, you're going to hear guidance. You're going to hear, well, check out this article by this person in something natural that has great results with diabetes. Things are going to show up in your life. But the new way of doing things that is part of the salvation of the world means that we are all consistently choosing to operate from our connection to God, meaning nobody lies to each other. Nobody takes more than somebody else because they think that they should be the haves and the rest are the have-nots. Nobody will ever lie and cheat a brother or a sister. Not possible. So to have that kind of a happy dream, you must take the road less traveled, meaning you must stop being a person who operates in fear because there will be no fear to guide you here. There will only be freedom. Now you're going to be free to try whatever you want, free to try. So if you bump your toe, go to this shaman or go to this maybe doctor who does maybe chiropractic. They'll set your toe back to be able to experience what is possible when we operate from that high frequency of love and trustworthiness and transparency. There will be no greed there, and things will not be done for money. To have that experience, you've got to see what keeps you anchored in the world that you're afraid to leave. Because nobody's going to force you. You have free will. You do not have to go the path of the happy dream. You may want it, but wanting it without the action to take it keeps you in the illusion that we're spiritual, but we're still afraid. Fear still informs all of our decisions. So the course is very simple. You have to make the choice. God is not going to make the choice for you to let go of the ego because God gave you free will to pick the ego over God, knowing that you cannot not be part of God. You are just experiencing. See, the happy dream is our reality. We're just experiencing the nightmare because we want to do it our way. We're being stubborn 2-year-olds. I'm going to do it my way. And that's okay. God's not going to punish us. Paragraph 8 says, and so we find our peace when we choose to listen to God. When we choose to let the ego go, that's when we find our peace because it's always been there. Sentence 2, we will accept the function God has given us. For all illusions rest upon the weird belief that we can make another for ourselves. That is a weird belief that we can make ourselves another world. We can make ourselves another function than what God gave us. God gave us a function to be free, to be at peace, to experience abundance. But we have settled for lack and limitation because our minds have been trained from a very young age to feel like a victim. And because we don't want to feel like a victim, we go on and do all the things that we're told to do so that we can have a better life. And most of us are unhappy with our lives, which is why we drink or we drug or we do all kinds of things that are not really healthy for us. We overeat, we don't exercise, we'll do all kinds of things because we are afraid to not follow the system, to not do what everybody else has told us. Salvation of the world means we're taking the road less traveled because when we go, and many of us are moving in that direction, that creates a beautiful light. It creates the ability to see tangibly the formation of communities that operate in integrity, um, the financial systems that operate in integrity, the medical systems that operate in integrity. That puts off a light. It puts off a vibe. And what's happening is for a long time, this has been dominant. And these were whacks. Oh, wacky people who go do natural stuff. And, the media was really happy to let us know how bad this was. Or they would put them in jail for giving people natural remedies. That's against the rules, against the laws. We're going to take their medical license away. We've seen that. We've seen lots of people persecuted. Jesus wasn't the only one persecuted. Lots of everyday people are persecuted when they are helping us move down the road less traveled. But what has happened is that more and more people are tipping the balance. They're moving to this road less traveled. We are at the point right now where there are so many who have left the system that the system is cracking. It is crumbling. The question is, do we want to be there to be the last one that it falls on? Or do we want to be over here enjoying life and sipping, nice iced tea by enjoying life on this side? Which one is totally up to you? A world of peace, and that world of peace comes with a lot of work. It comes with the work of unplugging yourself from the old. That is not easy. That is uncomfortable because you have to experience every single one of your attachments. Your fears are going to come up. But that is the reward, if you will, for those who are willing to do the work that is necessary to trust that you have not only the intelligence, you have the strength, you have the holiness, the capacity, and the peace right inside of you to experience that. So as I am plugged from the matrix, I'm saving the world because I'm no longer forcing anybody to believe in what, well, I shouldn't say forcing, but I did kind of my children, forcing them to believe what I believed to keep our fears alive. Oh, you have to get a degree to get a good job and to make money. Keeping them in fear. If you don't get that degree, if you don't do well in school, if you don't blah, 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 you're not going to amount to much. Well, no wonder my kids, all of them, did drugs and drank because they were so scared that they were not going to be as successful as their mom and dad. All because we were passing their fear onto them to keep the matrix going. But when I started unplugging from the matrix and I started basically, no, I'm not going to participate in these things, they were like, who are you and what have you done to my mother? So we went through a period of time when they thought I lost my mind because I did. I was literally changing my way of thinking and I was letting go of my egoic mind until now they're like, oh, wow, mom, thank you for uh sharing the things that you're sharing. Now they question everything. Now they look at things very differently. And of course they're doing it with my grandchildren, which is amazing that these kids are not being trained into following the system. They're being trained into following their heart, following that God within. So sentence number 3 says our self-made roles are shifting, and they seem to change from mourner to ecstatic bliss of love and loving. We are going to mourn everything that collapses. We're going to be sad for the old ways of doing things. One more time, I got to blow my nose. Yes, there is going to be a lot of sadness in fear and worry when you're not abiding by the old systems anymore. And maybe some of us will not be able to complete that in this lifetime. It may take another lifetime where we incarnate and we're born into a system that maybe has already changed a lot and already has the new medical system, financial system. If you believe in things like this, that we are incarnating to ascend through different human experiences, there are many who are leaving the 3D world to incarnate and be ready because there's enough parents who are conscious who are raising their children in the awareness of a new way of doing things, and they just want to check out from here so they can just be born instantaneously over here into households that will foster that kind of thinking. Well, if you understand Tesla and brought us free electricity and tapped into those resources, well, he basically died a miserable person because they made it very difficult. Those who controlled the electric companies and the banks who made money off of that made it very difficult for his ideas to be mass produced because were they going to support competition? What? Free energy? We're charging people. So what happened? Power, money. You get the government with the power, you get the corporations with the money who collude, make sure that all of a sudden what he's doing is no, that's you can't do that. That's illegal. You can't go against the system. So people like him have a death experience, they incarnate, and they come into a next lifetime where they can have the possibility to do more things. I've heard some rumors about who is Tesla in this incarnation, but the thing is that we are moving to a higher frequency. Do you want to go there while you're still in this physical body is the only question. If you're not prepared to do the work of seeing everything that you're afraid that holds you in bondage to the old system, it's okay. Through the incarnation process, you're going to come into something already more advanced. No problem. But if you want to have that experience while you're awake, if you want to be part of the process, if you want to be part of the ascension, if you want to support the plan that God has for us, then let's do it together and we walk together and co-create this new earth. But we have to do it ourselves. So, sentence 4 says, we can laugh or weep and greet the day with welcome or with tears. Our very being seems to change as we experience 1,000 shifts in mood, and our emotions race us high indeed or dash us to the ground in hopelessness. I'm gonna go into paragraph number 9 because it's all tied together. Is this the Son of God? Could he create such instability and call it Son? He who is changeless shares his attributes with his creation. We were created by something that is changeless. We could tap into that power, that source, that truth, that peace if we want to. And the only reason we can't tap into that is because we have beliefs that hold us in the old ways. Until we get a hold of our mind and decide that we are going to be the observers of our thoughts, not the reactors to it, but we move ourselves backwards and we say, okay, these are all the beliefs that I have in here, and we are willing to write them down. My kids used to hate it, but I used to take my flip chart and I would start writing down the things that they were upset about. And I would take them through journeys right there, 30 minutes. Oh my gosh, here comes mom with a flip chart and the markers again. And I would draw a line right in the middle of the board and I would say to them, okay, tell me what is it that you want? Well, I want to graduate from high school and I want to go on a date and I want these things to happen. Boom, I would write them all up at the top of the sheet. High frequency. This is at the top. Okay, so what are you doing? Did you turn your homework in? No, I didn't turn my homework in. I would put that at the bottom. Did you ask the girl out for the date? No, I didn't do that. All right, so they could see very clearly, here's the line. This is what you say you want, but this is what you're doing. Do you see the inconsistency? You're being dishonest. You say you want this, but you're doing this. So until you get honest with yourself, you're not going to have what you say you want because your focus is on doing what you say you don't want. And of course, I would mess with their minds for a while and And then eventually they would come home from school. Mom, get the flip chart out. I got a problem I got to work through. So out came the flip chart. And it's always the same thing. Is it a high vibing thought? We all have those. We all deserve that. We were created to have high vibing ideas. We were all created to want to graduate, to want to go on a date, to find the perfect person, to be happy and experience love, joy, and peace. That is our birthright. But we keep listening to the ego and we do all of the things that sabotage us. That's not God's fault. That's not God's fault, and God doesn't keep us from experiencing what we want. God just gave us free will to use your mind however you want to use it. So we are using our mind, listening to the ego because we didn't know. We didn't know that we could choose to think differently. And to choose to think differently and have a different outcome, you must see what had you bound to the old ways of being. This is why we get the gift of forgiveness. We're we are here to forgive ourselves because we did not know what we were doing. Jesus taught us that on the cross. Forgive him, the murderer. He knew not what he was doing. Forgive them. But to forgive them, you must first forgive yourself. So when you begin that process of forgiving yourself for not knowing that you were insane, thinking you were sane the whole time, that is how you begin the process of saving the world. Because now you're not plugging into the old system. You're willing to walk away and to begin to show that you have the courage and the strength. And if you can do it, so can anybody else. If I can do this, there is nothing special about me. I'm just an ordinary person who has had an extraordinary commitment to liberation. That's all that it is. And that's where I always see the difference in my clients. In is those who commit to the ego and those who make the commitment to God. Because that's the only two things. Those are the only two choices. To allow yourself to move into this space where you could have freedom or you can have bondage, where you can have a smile or where you can feel hopeless. Totally your choice. Sentence number 4 in paragraph 9 says, all the images his son appears to make have no effect on what he is. All this world of rules and laws and regulations, we made all that up. Has no power if you walk away. No power whatsoever. And we're going to see more and more of that happening as the government continues through its process of not funding things. I don't know if you're paying attention to this or not. But Trump has said several times, and listen, to me, Trump is not my savior. My savior is God. My savior, well, actually, my savior is me. God already saved me. So I'm accepting the saving that I have already received. Jesus is showing me the way. But Trump is not a savior. Trump is a brother who is performing a role who, when I look at it, happens to be of a higher frequency than what we have been used to. And if you've been listening to what Trump has said, he has said it many times that he's going to abolish the IRS, that we should not pay taxes. Well, where is that also stated? In the Constitution, that taxes were not income taxes was not going to be part of this republic. So what is happening right now when you look at the government shutdown? If you listen, again, you have to have the ears to hear. You begin to hear that, I forget the numbers, but in the thousands, IRS agents are being furloughed. Why? Because he's already said that we're going to do away with income tax. It's not constitutional. So the old way was to pay taxes, and we're going to punish you if you don't pay your taxes, and we're going to come after you, and you're going to be in jail. So you better, through fear, pay your taxes. However, that is something that has never, ever been ratified. It's not a law that you have to pay taxes. You will not be able to find that as a law, written law. I followed a whole bunch of people who worked for the IRS, who were accountants, who decided to look into this, and they couldn't find that law. Those people were fired and they were sent away. So I stopped paying taxes about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I decided I'm not doing that. Another one of those fears that I had to face. And I made a decision. Nope, I'm not going to do it. And then here we've got somebody who is in this new way of thinking that we need to dismantle the old, who's actually getting rid of the Federal Reserve. Do you realize that the Federal Reserve is not federal and it has no reserves? When you begin to open your mind and you begin to see the images that the ego has made, the illusion of power over here to keep humanity enslaved, well, as we move into the new earth, we don't need a Federal Reserve. We don't need somebody and I don't know if you knew this, but the Federal Reserve is a private corporation and nobody knows who are the owners of that corporation. All of that was done in such an amazing way. Go back and study the formation of that. If you want to read an interesting book about that, it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island, written about what happened in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created in the dark of night to make people think that we had a place that had reserves and that they were federal. But the Federal Reserve does not answer to the government, doesn't answer to the president. I don't know if you've noticed that Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, is not doing what Trump wants him to do. So you can see that that means that the Federal Reserve does not belong to the people. It belongs to a few people who manipulate the finances, manipulate all of the world finances, along with other central banks around the world, but they are not beholden to the people. That's not of God. God doesn't do anything where anybody has to be enslaved, where anybody has to become a victim of somebody else, where anything that operates in lack and limitation is part of humanity. So the more that we understand what is happening here, the more that we're going to see that all the images his son appears to make have no effect on what he is. We have to walk away from these things that are not true, that are made up. And the only way to walk away from them is to face the fears that you have that keep you bound to them. Because it is through our fears and our agreements to participate in that game that that game stays in motion. You pull your energy away from it, you begin to create a whole new game. Well, now you're playing a game in transparency. And these systems that are transparent are being built. Right now, if you study the blockchain is a system that is transparent. Everybody can see what everybody's doing, which is really fascinating because if you're paying attention to the financial markets, you can see some things that happened here last Friday that were suspect. Well, with the blockchain, you can trace who did that. Fascinating, fascinating. So, sentence 5 says, they blow across his mind like windswept leaves. These are the images that we've made, that the ego makes, that form a patterning, an instant, break apart to group again and scamper off. Kind of like the leaves in the fall. Right now, my grandkids were raking leaves. There's leaves of every color on the ground. And the ego has created these systems that form patterns, as it says in here, for an instant. In an instant, you can say 100 years. Federal Reserve's been there a little bit over 100 years. Formed a pattern. We all bought into it. We got all scared. Lots of policies have been made that have put us all in very bad situations financially, as not only as individuals, but as a country, put us in debt, crazy numbers. How can we be in debt like that? Well, it's crazy when you begin to study that all of these things are part of the financial manipulations that we were ignorant to. You begin to educate yourself, you begin to pull out of that, and you begin to do things very, very differently. These things are going to break apart and scamper off, just like a whole pile of leaves when the wind blows is going to scamper off. That is how precarious what the world the ego has made. But it's only held together by those who are afraid to leave that system. So for us to be able to say that we're choosing the path of God and be able to be part of the salvation of the world, we need to be courageous enough to let go of feeding that which is an image. It's made up. None of it is real. But humans have been scared into thinking, well, only the politicians know better than I do. What if that's not true? What if most of the politicians that we've had are the most incompetent people possible? But they put on a happy face or they put on a good story, and we said, okay, yeah, you can have my vote. You go do what you need to do, and I'm not gonna check up on it. I'm not gonna look to see if these laws are real, if they're constitutional. I didn't do that. Now I'm finding out what? We've had so many laws that have been passed that are unconstitutional. How can that be? Well, we're gonna find out pretty soon because all this stuff is coming out. Um, and then, of course, the last sentence says, or like mirages seen above a desert rising from the dust. That's what the ego is all about. It's created all of these mirages. We have bought into all of this only because we did not understand. It was not taught to us. As a matter of fact, it's the very thing that they didn't want us to know. That we are as God created us, that we're powerful, that we're magnificent, that we're strong, that peace is our birthright. It is natural. So all of the work that we're doing, and we won't have to be doing this for too many more generations. This is going to complete in a few generations because everybody's going to be raised remembering the truth of who they are. From a very young age, knowing how to meditate, how to center yourself, how to connect to God. Instead of God is on a cloud out there, I tell my grandkids, no, everything is made of God. Funny little story. We had some moose that visit us here in the community. I put some pictures in the academy. Literally, one of them came up to the porch eating a pumpkin that my grandson had was starting to carve, and that moose came in and devoured that pumpkin. So a day later or 2 days later, I was talking to my grandson about where God is, and God is in the clouds, not on a cloud. God is the clouds. God is you. You are made of God. God is everything that you're made of. God is in the leaves. God, that we were raking. God is in the grass. And he said, and God is in the poop of the moose, in the moose poop. And I was like, yes, you're right. God is the moose poop because God is the substance that everything is made of. Not one thing has more power than another. God created us all equally as capable of having what is our birthright, which is happiness. However, if your mind is trained into fear, into bowing down to others, into mommy, daddy know better than you, or the government knows better than you, or the teacher or the preacher know better than you will not tap into your own internal voice because you will be conditioned to you better hear theirs or else. And that fear of punishment has created so much suffering in this world because we will acquiesce to out of fear of punishment. And those who are courageous, well, they've been labeled bad people. They've been labeled, you know, conspiracy theorists. So they've been labeled and anarchists or whatever. Pay attention to who really is the anarchist, who really is, what are really these conspiracies? Because if you go down those rabbit holes, you'll begin to see so much of it has been made up, and they will, like it says right here. Um, I'm going to repeat this sentence here. Like a mirage seen above a desert rising from the dust, they will disappear. They will disappear because when we become more concerned about following our freedom, we will then become the one that will show through example that salvation of the world depends on me. The minute I unplug from that, this matrix is going to lose power. It has to. 8 billion people feeding it? Yeah, it's got a lot of power. But all of a sudden, you got a billion people here and 7 billion. Well, it's a little wobblier. You get 2 billion over here and only 5 billion or 6 billion that are supporting this matrix. Before you know it, once you've got 4 billion people who are not buying into somebody else being uh, having more power than me, and you're seeing those marches around the world, people who are saying, no, we're not going to be told what we're supposed to do. We want to stand for what it is, what feels right for us, for what feels right for our communities. You're going to see once we hit that 50-50, and we're not that far from that, this side just wants peace, integrity, wants to be able to express themselves because they're not going to hurt anybody. The side that stands with God, no matter what they call it, stands for freedom for everybody. This is what is happening in the world. The road less traveled is getting trampled on by many. Are we on it? That's the question. Over here, this is going to fall very soon. And I'm predicting before 2030, 2032 at the latest, we are going to see these institutions caving because they were founded on lies, on inequality. They're founded as if war somehow keeps us safe. War does not keep us safe. What keeps us safe is the strength of God, the knowingness that we want to communicate with others and work things out for the greater good. But to do that, to have the ability to have that communication, that conversation, you must first stop being arrogant and think you know better. And you must humble yourself and know that whatever we do in the name of God is going to always be, has to always be for the greater good of all. It must include peace. It must include equality. Otherwise, it's not really God. It's an image of God. And God knows we got plenty of that. No pun intended there. We got way too many images of God. We need to get to know who God is, and we will see God in each and every person who stands for peace, who stands for love, for freedom, for, well, the salvation of the world. Meaning, stop feeding lies that keep people in bondage, start telling the truth that allow people to make a choice for freedom. Nobody's going to be forced to come over here. That's not going to happen. But the more that are here, the more we emanate a light that will become more attractive to those who will eventually cross that bridge. This lifetime or the next one, I don't know. But it is certain that every one of us is already safe in the mind of God. So if some people want to dilly-dally over here, play with the ego and suffer a little longer, well, that's their choice. Absolutely their choice because God gave us free will. Not those little children. They deserve to have parents who are more willing to question things. But if that's the path that they go and their parents take them down that path, nothing we can do about that. We got to respect that everybody has a direct line to God. All right. Sorry we ran a little later, but I didn't want to not include those couple of paragraphs and let that whole section be just kind of make more sense in 7, 8, and 9. If anybody wants to share anything before we close off, by all means, unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the academy or in future classes, or maybe here next Wednesday. Bye, everybody, then.